Okay, we have quorum, I can see, so we'll call the board meeting of Thursday, April 22nd, 2021 to order. Welcome everybody. Nice to see you again. Maybe one day we'll be able to have an actual meeting in person again, but not right now. Can I get a motion, please, for the adoption of the agenda?
I'll give you that.
Mr. Dunn and Windover. Anyone opposed to that approval? That motion is passed. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest on anything on today's agenda? Seeing none. You need approval of the minutes, item 3 from the board meeting of February. Is that right? February? No, the second meeting from last month.
I'll give you that motion, Chair Latham.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Director Smith, second by Director Hooper. Thank you. Any questions, comments on the minutes? Anyone opposed to approval of the minutes?
No.
And that passes. Thank you. Businesses arising from the minutes, there was none. A couple of notes I have that the draft minutes were posted on the website as per the new regulations within 30 days as draft. Once they're approved at this meeting, they'll be updated till final minutes. And just so you know, the comments relating to the Planning Act amendments that we approved at the last meeting regarding the ministerial zoning order have been submitted to the minister. So just an update there. Deputations, we have none. And is our guest joining us today? I don't see him on the screen. Mark, do you know?
Yes. So I know that Melanie did receive confirmation that he was able to attend. I don't think he's been able to get online yet. So when he does get online, maybe we can introduce him. And I know his schedule is pretty busy, so he's trying to fit us in. So.
Okay, no problem. That's just Jamie Coons, who's the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. He's not been appointed a member yet by his chief, but he wanted to show up and say hi. He's going to be our new appointed board member. When he comes on, we'll take a minute and welcome him on board. So we'll move into item 6 then, presentations. The Mclarens Creek. Let me start over on that one. Mclarens Creek Floodplain Mapping Study. Ron and Galen are going to give us a bit of a presentation. And then what I'd like to do right after the presentation is move report 7.3 up right after the presentation, and we'll deal with them both at the same time while they're fresh. And Galen can get back to work, back to what he needs to do. So I'll turn it over to Ron and Galen for a presentation. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair Latham and board members, and we're pleased to have the opportunity to bring forward the Mclarens Creek floodplain mapping study to you. I guess I'm just looking if Galen at this point shares the screen to show our overall map, or at least the presentation to be started.
There we go.
There we go.
Can you see that okay?
Mm-hmm. I can. That looks just, that looks great, actually, Galen. And maybe just the slide after that for a couple of introductory. Yeah, that's super. And sort of if we look back on when the entire floodplain mapping program for the city of Kawartha Lakes started, we're almost a decade into it. It seems probably hard to believe for those who were around at the beginning. I can't say that I was, but I have been for the second half, and it started, as I say, 2012. This is the 9th project. So if you can see the 9 on the map that's provided there, that's the area that we're looking at today. And number 10, which will be the last one in the program, will be Fenland Falls South, and that will be coming for board endorsement later this year. The Mclarens Creek floodplain study, we're looking at quite a large area. It's 57 square kilometers. However, there are minimal development pressures, I would say, in that area. Now, that said, it does include It does encompass the village of Cambrai, but for the most part, it's a large area, as I say, with not a great deal of development opportunities and pressures at this point. And it's near and dear to us at Cambrai because it flows into eventually Lake Sturgeon, and of course we're on the shores of Lake Sturgeon. And I think with that, I'll pass it over to Galen to go over the details of the study itself and how we got the information that we do.
Perfect. Thanks, Ron. Can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, just because my phone audio is not great, so I got my Bluetooth headphones. So yeah, so just so if you don't know who I am, my name's Gail Yerix. I'm the floodplain mapping GIS technician with Kawartha Conservation. I've been working on this project since 2012, so there's a bit of continuity there. So a few of the board members I think are familiar with me, and if you're not, well, welcome, and I look forward to giving you guys some details on this project. Okay, so what you're seeing in front of you is just some localized flooding, that some photos that we have historically, some localized flooding in the Mclarens Creek watershed. This is up on, so the two non-foggy photos are on Elm Tree Road and Thunderbridge Road, and then the ones that are foggy are off Nile Road. So you can see there is, it can get up pretty high in the spring when we get that flood melt. Okay, so here's an air photo just showing exactly where Mclarens Creek is and the study area. So the green is the actual floodplain extent that we mapped for this project. And the red boundary is the LiDAR boundary, so where LiDAR information as well as air photos were collected. It also mimics the drainage area for Mclarens Creek. Now, as you can see at the kind of north end of that area, there's a water body, and it's actually a wetland. It's Goose Lake Wetland Complex, and it's very significant to this project, and it's a provincially significant wetland that's approximately 635 hectares in size. So it's quite large, and it's very important because if in fact we didn't have the regulations we currently have and people were able to encroach on the boundaries of Goose Lake and develop on it, you'd see a significant increase in the size of the floodplain through Cambrai and through the Mclarens Creek watershed. So that particular wetland acts as a big sponge and holds and retains a lot of water that helps protect actually the village of Cambrai during these big events. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. Okay, so these are the details of the floodplain mapping project. I'm not going to go into crazy detail, so if you do have further questions afterwards, please by all means let me know. Essentially with the floodplain mapping program, we follow provincial guidelines set up by the Ministry of Natural Resources, and the two big storm events that you've probably heard of are the 1 in 100 year storm, as well as the regional or regulatory storm. The regional or regulatory storm event in this case is the Timmins storm. I'm sure you've heard of the Hurricane Hazel storm.
Mm-hmm.
They use that as a regulatory event in Southern Ontario, where the Timmins event is a better representation of what could happen in our area in Central Ontario. When we're creating regulatory mapping, we use whichever one is the most conservative between the Timmins storm event or the 1 in 100 year event. And in this case, the Timmins storm was the most conservative. So we're using that as our regulatory benchmark. It's not just Kawartha Conservation that works on this. We have engineering team at Ganaraska Conservation Authority. And we have a technical committee as well, made up of both Kawartha Conservation staff, Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority staff, as well as City of Kawartha Lake staff, just to answer any big questions and to debate certain things with the project. On top of that, we also go through an extensive peer review process and QA/QC process with our data. and that's used through a third-party source. In this case, we've used Grech and Associates, which we've actually used consistently through the whole floodplain mapping process just to keep things consistent. So we're very confident with the actual end results of our projects. So I'm just going to move into some more of the details in regards to actually how we get the mapping. So first I'm going to start with the actual data that is collected. Now I mentioned earlier about LiDAR and air photos. So I'm just going to use the cursor here to kind of identify what I'm speaking about. So first off, the LiDAR acquisition that was done in 2012 is essentially a plane will fly over the areas we've designated for floodplain mapping, and it'll get a digital representation of the land by taking elevation points using a specific laser they have mounted to the plane. And it takes, I guess, 2 to 3 essentially GPS points that have an elevation and coordinate attached to them per square meter. And the one thing about this particular laser that was used is that it bounces off of water. So this is where I come into play. I get out my waders and take the GPS equipment, get into the actual creek itself, and take GPS points at the bottom of the actual creek. So I walk a large extent of Mclarens Creek to get that information. And all this information ties into our modeling. So it's very critical to have very accurate base information so that we have a real life representation of where water will go during these major storm events. One other thing that we do that I do survey that is really critical to the modeling piece is bridges, dams, and culverts. We want to know the sizing of all these structures because they act as pinch points for water, and it actually will hold back water in certain situations. So we want to know where those are because that will show where there's restrictions in flow, and it just helps determine what roads will get flooded out, things like that, based on its size and the material that it's made of. So now I'm just going to go into our modeling piece. So we have all this base information, which is for the model, and it just essentially will help determine where the water will go based on a certain storm event. Other information that's included in this, though, is we have soil types as well as ELC information. Sorry, what else do I have down here? Our future land use information from the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan. And the structure information. So with all that information, we put into the models. Now there's 2 types of models. There's a hydraulic and hydrologic model. The hydrologic model is based on like rainfall information and more quantity of water. And then the hydraulic model is how the water flows through the system. Now, based on what I've mentioned previously with like the soil types and land use types, each one of those will be assigned what's called a runoff coefficient. So essentially it provides the model with a value of how fast the water will flow off each specific piece. So concrete will have a different runoff coefficient, say to a field. Water will flow off concrete faster than it will a farmer's field. So with all of that information tied into the model as well, we're able to get an outcome, which is our floodplain. And the idea is the more detailed information that goes into that model, the more confident we are in what the floodplain information that it generates for us, so that we can put into our regulatory mapping. So I'm just going to go into our maps next. So I believe in the agenda package, you guys received these maps, and I'm going to try to make sense of them for you. So this is just map sheet 1. There's 3 specific map sheets. The red is the actual flood line, and we have various cross sections where it shows the actual flood elevations. And people can use this information to determine how high the water will be depending on where they are. One thing I want to bring up on map sheet 2 is these orange arrows. That's a spill. There was a small one on map sheet 1, but map sheet 2 is a little more significant. Now, because of the dam and berm that are located just above Cambrai here, or Cambrai Road, it essentially causes some spilling of water, very shallow and slower moving, that ends up going around the pond. Now, the actual modeling that we use in our scope of this project is that's I guess bigger than what the scope was. So if in fact any development were to occur in these areas, I would suggest another study be done in order to kind of using 2D modeling, which is more in depth, just to determine more accurately where that water will go. So that's just something identified by this study that we could do as a future study, or a developer could do in order to develop in this area. So at least we've identified that potential hazard. And then here's our map sheet 3. Oh, one, sorry, I went the wrong way. There's 3. Okay, there you go, Ron. Sorry, that was a lot of information.
Yeah, and I'll just sort of wrap it up. I mean, at this time of year, it's fairly easy to, I guess, see and sell the value of floodplain mapping. And you can notice it on every creek, every river, every body of water that's in the area right now. There are two real key components, or two real key deliverables from a floodplain mapping program such as this. One is for the residents, for the area residents who live and are the landowners in that area, so they are informed and are able to make decisions about their land and how they wish to use their land. And the other key one is, of course, to the municipality. And not only does this type of information become a component of a schedule in an official plan map, which then becomes a component of a zoning bylaw, and it also allows the municipality to realize maybe where their dollars are best spent in terms of municipal investment and emergency plans, to keep those types of plans informed. And I guess with that, we'll just take any questions you may have.
Thanks, gentlemen. Yeah, those pictures kind of say it all, don't they? Can I get the screen back and we'll see, just so I can see the board?
And Mr. Chair, just happy to announce as well that our guest, Mr. Jamie Coons, has joined us partway through the presentation there.
Okay, awesome. Let me just wrap up this presentation if we can in the report, and then we'll introduce Jamie, if that's okay. You got a few minutes to hang in there with us, Jamie? I'm going to assume he does. Okay, so let's get a motion, if we can, to receive the presentation on the Mclarens Creek floodplain mapping study, please. And then we'll see if there's any
motion, Mr. Chair.
Director Dunn, and second by, yep, I got you. Can you hear me? Director Dunn, seconded by Director Seymour Fagan. Questions? Anyone have any questions on the presentation? Seeing none. Oh, sorry. Director Hooper, go ahead.
Thank you. A great presentation and a great presentation in hard copy. And I just wonder, with the floodplain mapping and that, how much development is within the floodplain mapping? Is this is a new boundary that they developed now? So is there a lot of significant development in that new mapping, or is it beyond that? And if you could just elaborate a little bit on the spills too as well.
I didn't hear the last part there, but I mean, development pressures are quite minimal in this catchment area. I mean, you've got a relatively small village, which hasn't changed a great deal. And the official plan in the area would probably be keeping things at this type of thing. I don't know of any active development applications that are in this area or have been for a little while.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'm comparing it to too much to our area. Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty remote sort of agricultural area with not a whole lot of development interest, that's for sure. So any other questions? And Catherine, if you've got a question, you'll just have to speak up because I can't hear you, obviously, or see you. Any other questions? You have a question, Catherine?
No, but actually, I've been hitting, if I hit the screen, I can raise my hand if you happen to see a yellow hand.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks. So we have a motion to receive the presentation. So anyone opposed to receiving the presentation? Okay, we'll consider that passed. And just what I'd like to do real quick is pull up the report that goes with it, 7.3, just to screw up your agendas. But while we have everybody here and it's fresh, that they're looking for, sorry, let me find it here. I screwed myself up. The motion is that the Mclarens Creek floodplain mapping report and associated modeling be endorsed. Does anyone want to move that? Director Hooper, thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Director Kiesebrink, thank you. Is there any questions on the report? We covered it in the presentation. Seeing none, anyone opposed to endorsing the Mclarens Creek floodplain report? And we'll consider that passed. Awesome. Thanks, Galen. Thanks, Ron. Appreciate the work on that. Is our guest still with us, or did we lose him, Mark?
It's great that they added the reminder that you're talking to yourself in your own little room. So sorry, I was on mute there. It looks like he either had the scheduling conflict come up or maybe some technology issues and maybe got dropped. So if he's able to join us later, maybe we can introduce him there at that point in time. And at this point, it doesn't look like he's in the waiting room or in the call at this point. So
okay, just keep me posted if you would, please. Next up is the presentation on the integrated watershed management and monitoring strategy. And I think we're going to hear from Emma and Nancy Aspiden. Did I pronounce that correctly, Nancy?
You sure did.
Thank you. Go ahead, ladies.
Thank you. So through the chair, we're delighted to be able to share progress on the environmental monitoring strategy today. So since the board endorsed development of the strategy in November 2020, we've been working hard as a team to review our programs and seek input from stakeholders as well. So just a reminder of the goal that we set out with. So we want to be able to provide a cost-effective environmental monitoring network that facilitates evidence-based decision-making and that provides accessible real-time science and data to our community while aligning with our strategic goals and that of our municipal partners. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Nancy Aston to take you through the presentation. So Nancy is our coordinator of environmental programs and is also our GIS specialist. And she's been doing a fantastic job at keeping us on track with the strategy working with the team really hard to pull all this data together. So thank you, Nancy, and over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just want to make sure everyone can see the slide presentation I'm sharing. Can everyone see it?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. I'm very excited to be here today to provide an update on the progress to date of our environmental monitoring strategy. The Integrated Watershed Management Team is currently undertaking monitoring activities to provide scientific data and evidence to inform decision-making locally and provincially. In 2021, the Integrated Watershed Management Team is embarking in developing a new 10-year environmental monitoring strategy. This strategy will help to guide our focus activities or identify future areas of investment. Our intent in the development of this strategy will be to align with both our current and new strategic plan and provide benefits to all high-level goals within our corporate strategy. Our overall goal of this strategy is to provide cost-effective environmental monitoring network that facilitates evidence-based decision-making and that provides accessible, real-time science and data to our community while aligning with our strategic goals and that of our municipal partners. The development of the strategy will take the entire year of 2021 to complete. The first quarter, we have focused primarily on gathering background information and conducting a comprehensive review of current programming. The draft document will be formulated throughout the summer months of 2021 with consultation on draft plan occurring in the third quarter. We hope to have the plan finalized and adopted by the board in December. Since January, we have reached out to the public and community partners through an engagement survey. The public survey was facilitated through our various social media channels, while the community partner survey was sent directly out to individuals chosen by Kawartha staff based on their involvement on projects with Kawartha Conservation, and that represented one of the following community types: government, academia, consultants, First Nations, NGOs, and community partners. The Integrated Watershed Management Team has also underwent a comprehensive review of our current monitoring programs, which included a SWOT analysis, a program value analysis, and a cost breakdown looking at financials and volunteer contributions. Receiving feedback from our community partners will be invaluable throughout the development of the environmental monitoring strategy. The selection of a strategic guidance group has been initiated, which will include both community partners and Kawartha staff. The next few slides will summarize the results that we obtained from both the public and community partners engagement surveys. For the public engagement survey, we received a total of 53 responses. The questions for this survey were very generalized, but captured a lot of beneficial information that we can use moving forward. Out of all the public survey responses, 90% of the individuals said that they had heard about Kawartha Conservation, which illustrates that we are recognized throughout the area. 64% of the responses indicated that they were permanent residents of the watershed, with 55% being seasonal. The survey responses also indicated that there was a good distribution of participants that lived along a shoreline and those that didn't. The age group of 46 to 64 had the highest survey participation, representing 51%, with the age group 35 to 45 coming in second with 25%. We didn't have any representation from the group 18 or younger, and very little from the age group 65 to 74. We asked the question in the public survey what they thought were the biggest environmental concerns facing the Kawartha watershed today. This figure represents the distributions of concerns. The larger the box, the more survey responses indicated the concern. Water quality and development topped the concerns amongst the survey participants, with aquatic plants, loss of fish habitat and stock, climate, and flooding and water levels followed closely behind. The community partner survey was conducted a bit different than the public survey. Staff selected individuals from community that had been involved with Kawartha Conservation over the years and that we thought would provide valuable survey feedback. We had a total of 34 individuals participate in this survey. For this survey, our goal was to target specific community groups and receive at least one response from each group. The community groups included all levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipal, academia, agriculture, First Nations, NGOs, consultants, and community partners. We were able to get responses from each group except for the community group of First Nations. 85% of the survey participants indicated that their organization had been involved in a provincial, involved or have provided financial support towards environmental projects over the years. The graph on this slide represents the breakdown of each. Government agencies tend to provide more financial and in-kind support, while community partners have a good mix of financial, in-kind, and volunteer. Agriculture and academia tend to provide more in-kind and volunteer support rather than financial. Moving forward, we would like to ensure that the Integrated Watershed Management Team is collecting meaningful information that helps support our community partners. Currently, 47% of the survey participants answered yes to Kawartha Conservation providing data to their organizations, and 26% didn't know. We also posed the question, does your organizations have any data gaps where the Integrated Watershed Management Team could assist with? We had 48% of the survey participants answer yes to this question, and provided the following areas where assistance could be welcomed: This is just a list of some of the topics: wetland evaluations, species at risk, aquatic plant control, climate vulnerability, beach water quality sampling that's outside of our current special projects, providing data to cottage associations, farm water quality sampling, and mapping of flood zones and private wells. A full comprehensive review of all our current programs have been undertaken. All of our current programs fall under a variety of different environmental indicators, which can be broken down into the following major categories: biomonitoring, climate, groundwater, land use, temperature monitoring, water quality, and water quantity. For each current program, a SWOT analysis was completed, which outlined the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the program. We conducted a program value analysis to define the ultimate value of each program, the benefit it provides to the watershed community, and the specific qualitative and quantitative metrics involved with running each program. Finally, we looked into each program's resourcing and completed a detailed look at the efforts required, as well as the in-kind contributions the program receives over the course of 1 year. The Strategic Guidance Group will be initiated later this month, consisting of 10 members representing staff from Kawartha Conservation and external individuals representing all community types. This group will provide invaluable feedback throughout the development of this strategy. A terms of reference has been developed and circulated to all members, outlining the committee's roles and responsibilities and expectations. Over the next few months, we will engage with the Strategic Guidance Group to review both engagement survey results and go over all the background information completed on current programming. After that is completed, this group will help to define the components of the strategy so that the strategy document can begin to be drafted over the summer months. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide an update on the environmental monitoring strategy. I look forward to coming back to you with an update in August.
Thank you for that. I was just going to ask you, when do you see this coming back to the board? So you've answered my question. Let's get a motion to receive the presentation for the integrated watershed management presentation, please. Director Windover, seconded by Director Kiesebrink. Any questions for Nancy or Emma regarding the presentation? Pretty straightforward.
I have a question. I don't know if you can see me.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious. I was looking at your report on page 36, and it talks about survey responses, and it says that there was a significant portion that didn't know if Kawartha Conservation currently provides environmental data to your organization, and another portion that said no, and then others that said yes. It would be interesting to know, out of the ones that you surveyed, who some of the entities are who are not currently getting data, who maybe should be. I don't know, or maybe just a composite summary of that, because the resource that you provide is so invaluable. And I just thought that was really interesting that there was such a huge number of people in the survey that either weren't or didn't know if they were getting environmental data from Kawartha Conservation Authority. Could you comment on that?
Yeah. So the survey was sent out to people that we have worked with throughout the different municipalities and the external partners. And some of them were technical staff. So like we tried to hit the directors and we tried to hit the managers, but some of them were technical staff. And whether or not they were just new to the municipality or the workplace, some of them just didn't know. I guess it depends how closely those individuals worked with us. That kind of altered their comment.
I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive. Anyone opposed to receiving the presentation? We'll consider that passed. Thank you. Let's pull up while they're here the 7.4, the report. It's the report that follows along. The motion that the update on a monitoring strategy be received. Director Moore, would you move that?
Sorry. Yes, I will.
Thank you. Second by Director Smith. Any questions on the report? Anyone opposed to receiving the report? And we'll consider that passed. Thank you.
No.
Appreciate it. Thank you, ladies. Okay, so we'll move back. I know that I've scrambled your agenda around. We'll move back up to 7.1, which is a summary listing of permits. We'll get Ron. I don't know if you want to comment, Ron. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a motion to receive. You seem to be, I'm not sure where you can improve on 43 out of 43, but is there anything you want to highlight for us?
I maybe just would add the hard work of staff extends beyond just the permitting staff to really, there's a number of different people who don't necessarily have their names on the permits who do a lot of the background work. And I think they know who they are. So it's a team effort. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Ron on the permit process? Deborah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say congratulations. I think this is the first time that we've seen 100% within calc timeframes for complete application and 100% within timeframes for issue of a permit. What do you think made the difference this time? Have you noticed that there's been a reduction or an increase of projects during the pandemic?
I would say that through the chair, we probably were pretty close on a number of occasion, a number of months there, and maybe we just hit the right time frame. Things have, while they were probably busier than usual the previous 6 months, maybe they've started to slow down just a shade in the last 6 to 8 weeks. So we're probably finally being able to make sure we're where we want to be, and that's where we want to continue to be.
Amazing. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're setting the bar pretty high there, Ron. So now when you go down to 99%, you're going to get criticized. Get questions. So keep up the good work. Thanks. Any other questions on permits? All right. Let's get a motion that report be received, please. Or do I have that? Yeah. No, Councillor. Director Moore, thank you. Seconded by Director Dunn. Any further questions? Anyone opposed to receiving it? We'll consider that passed. Thank you. Strategic actions update. Mark, I'll turn that over to you. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report here is really the accumulation of all the work from our team over the last quarter, so the first quarter of the year, and it's tied into the strategic actions which are identified in our current corporate strategic plan. You'll note that there's a lot of activity related to getting projects underway that they're on the docket for this year, and a lot of communications activities related to the programming that we offer. That's been something that we've really tried to focus in on that first quarter, and then of course the activities to help protect our communities from natural hazards. So that includes a lot of the good work that Ron was mentioning amongst our team, but also in Emma's department, specifically with the flood forecasting and the spring freshet that we're active on this year. So that is certainly be willing to entertain any questions that you have, answer any of them, and just like to thank our staff again for all their hard work on this.
Agree. Thank you. Director Hooper, go ahead.
Just got to turn my mic on. Sorry about that. With the in regards to Emma's portion of the agenda, the report in regards to protection, how was this year in regards to flooding, and was it considered to be a sort of an off year, or is it still right up with being something that we have to really, I just wondered how we were with in regards to the flooding reports and things like that.
Maybe what I can do, Mr. Chair, is I can start in, and then Emma can add her perspective. I think this year was in some ways a bit of an anomaly. So we had our big river to the north, the Burnt River did not impact our watershed in any large way. So that usually floods on an annual basis. So that was a little bit unusual. And I know from some of the team discussions that we have is the Kawartha Lakes themselves are not really in much of a surplus position at this point in time in terms of the water. So, they're actually, Trans-Siberian Waterways looking at conserving flow. And we are actually in a low water situation currently, I believe level 1 at this point in time. So it is a little bit of an anomaly. We did have, of course, a little bit of spring freshet, but only impacting the minor systems. And may I'll turn over to Emma then.
Thank you, Mark. And through the chair, what we saw, I think this year, again, is an earlier freshet than we had the previous year. And so we saw quite a gradual thaw. So we didn't see the huge flood events that we've seen previously in other years. What we did see, though, we had situations where we had a lot of runoff across the land. And so because the lakes were still frozen, the water wasn't able to go anywhere. So people in some locations experienced flooding of their properties. So that was very localized, I would say, to 1 or 2 places. But generally, we weren't seeing huge flood events from the creeks and the watershed in general.
Good. Thank you very much, because whatever happens in the north usually ripples down into the south. So
yes, we're always nervously watching.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Great report.
We're in good shape this year, but anything can change, so we won't talk about it.
I put the curse on it.
Exactly. Any other questions regarding the strategic action updates for the first quarter? Seeing none, can I?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair. Sorry.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just wanting to ask about, or first of all, the comment that the virtual permitting and pre-consultations sounds like a really great idea and a time saver for future. I think that's a great optimized target. I was wondering about the citizen science part under the Discover section. Did you get all of the participants that you needed, and what different kinds of ages of people are you getting that are participating in this?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to Emma, since that's certainly there's at least three different programs that are being looked at with some specific criteria to them. So go ahead, Emma.
Thank you, Mark. So through the chair, yes, we've got 3 different programs. So there is one program that's specific to seniors. So that's our Climate Action Group project. And then we have our Nearshore project, which isn't age specific. And similarly, we have our Aquatic Plant Control project, again, which isn't age specific, but a lot of these are, we're targeting individuals who live on shoreline properties specifically. So I know we're having some really good uptake, particularly we've done some interviews on Bob FM. So we have people that have contacted us. So staff have been doing those to kind of promote the different programs that we're running this year. So I think numbers are gradually coming in, but we're seeing a really good level of interest.
Oh, excellent. And with the trees part under conserve, congratulations on planting 21,000 native trees and 30 landowner projects. There was a subsidy of 11,400 from Forest Ontario and Highway of Heroes. Did those programs provide, I know Highway of Heroes, they were selling trees to commemorate war service. Did Kawartha Conservation get some funding out of that? Or could you clarify how that kind of tied together?
And Mr. Chair, if I can direct that to Christy Virgo, that'd be great. Thanks,
Mark. And through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Director Kiesebrink, we receive funding. So what happens is it's a subsidy by tree. So Highway of Heroes has, they have their tree planting program in memory of our service veterans. And then they also have a program where they provide additional funds for trees that are planted on.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And I think it's, the numbers escape me right now, but I think it's about 35 cents per tree. And so that gets added on to the subsidy for the private landowners.
Excellent. And further, if I could, Mr. Mayor, you're Mr. Mayor and you're our chair. Under the protect section, there was some incidents where you had to issue notices. How did you know that there was construction activity within an intake protection zone and wellhead protection areas? I was just curious about that. did you have like neighbors reporting, or how did that come about?
What maybe, Mr. Chair, I'll start in and then see if Ron has some additional comments. We do operate both in terms of compliance for our regulations related to Section 28, which is the development pertaining to natural hazards, as well as for source water. A lot of it is complaint driven, so we will get comments coming in from various landowners or concerned residents, but we are also out on the landscape as well. So it is a combination of both those, and may I'll turn over to Ron as well.
Through the chair, I wouldn't really have any additional details to add to that comment. I'd say that's quite accurate. Thank you, Mark. Okay,
and just one other comment under the protect and public safety. I know that incident at Ken Reed Park with the gentleman who had too much energy in the dog park. I'll just leave it at that. Installing the 2 cameras there, I think, is a really good idea and good safety defense. Is having staff now present on weekends within the, is that going to involve some overtime? I certainly think the staff support during peak use is a good idea. How will that affect your budget at all?
Mr. Chair, what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Christy, but I'll just lay some of the general framework in terms of our thinking on that. So what we were looking at is the immediate kind of concern over that incident, and the cameras will provide some assurances into the future. Also wanted to do that from a public safety perspective. I think it makes people feel safer as well, and then having that presence helps from a couple of different standpoints. Helps with the communications with our community that are using the park and the dog park in particular. So a lot of it was a communications perspective, but also trying to keep people safe. So operating from both perspectives, and I know that we did try and balance the budget on this. A little bit of a hit, but not too much. But I'll turn it over to Christy.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, Mark's points are really well taken. We found that in the weeks immediately following the incident, it was really important to have a staff presence, especially on the weekends when we don't typically have people here. A lot of that communication was just around, assuring people that we were taking action, that they were safe, and that, there had been appropriate follow-up and whatnot with the police services. So, we saw a great deal of concern from individuals when it first happened, and that has sort of subsided over time. We still get the odd inquiry as to, sort of what's happening, and we only know what the rest of the public knows with regards to the police services. But what we were able to do is sort of modify our work week so that folks were putting in partial days as opposed to full days. So making sure that our team was also well rested. As Mark said, there was a small impact on the budget, but I think that it was well worth it given the situation. And we're starting to dial that back now that things have started to calm down significantly. So,
and that gentleman has abusive, offensive gentleman has not returned, correct? He was banned from the park and charged. So yeah, so
he was charged, he was convicted, and he was banned from the park. He was also, we attempted to issue him a summons indicating that he was banned from all of our parks, but he was unable to retrieve that registered mail. And my assumption is that's probably because he's in jail.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are my questions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the update? Okay, we have, can I get a motion that's the staff report on strategic action?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I think Councillor Hooper, or sorry, Director Hooper has a question.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I tried to get my hand up and I tried to get your attention. I just a couple of quick comments in regards to the optimize the service. Congratulations to staff for securing the RBC funding for the Tech for Nature program. And I just, my one other question is in regards to, do we still have the Blue Canoe program still in effect as we move into the summer? No?
No, through you, Mr. Chair. No, the Blue Canoe program is not in effect anymore. It ended several years ago.
Okay,
and what we find, yep.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's no worries. It's kind of tricky sometimes, so don't be afraid to step up. Doesn't hurt my feelings. Look, we got Director Dunn back. He's got his computer working, so. I'll get a motion that the staff report on strategic actions update for the first quarter be received, please.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Director Kiesebrink, seconded by Director Hooper. Any further comments, questions? Anyone opposed to receiving that? That's passed. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just a time check. We're 10 to 2 right now.
Okay, thank you. Let's try 7.5. Depends how long you talk, Mark. You've got 5 minutes, the CAO report. So you're up. Go ahead.
All right, I'll make it fairly quick. The CAO report highlights some of the activities over the last month. And what I'll do is I'll just highlight a few things from Conservation Ontario. The new chair of Conservation Ontario is Andy Mitchell. So some of you may know him. He is the current chair of Autonomy Region Conservation Authority and the mayor of the township of Selwyn. So, local to us, which is great. And they are also working on a strategic plan. It's focused on several pillars: member services, governance and structure, public affairs and advocacy, and science and policy. So they're developing their strategy around that. As everyone knows, we're in the stay-at-home order now, so we did shift our business to more remote work. And we know that there is an exemption for government services, which we appear to qualify for. So although we are allowed to do work, we think it's still responsible to make sure everyone's safe, and certainly our team members' safety is paramount. So we are looking at all our field operations and making sure that they're done the safest manner. We're as you can see from the updates, working primarily remotely with our community, the community contact that we have, and still trying to service everyone to the greatest extent possible. But our administration office is closed, and everyone that can work remotely is working remotely. We have in the last quarter or two recognized that since we are working remotely, we've initiated a digital health and safety board, and that's actually a pretty big service improvement, because anyone that has a smart device can access it wherever they are, whether they're in the field or working remotely in the remote office environment. So that's a pretty big improvement, and we've also worked to digitize a lot of the things like our near miss reports. You saw some of the great work in planning, development, and engineering, and so that work is certainly starting to ramp up with spring. Stewardship and conservation lands. The big thing there is, of course, two things that you've already noted. Talking Forest, we received some grant funding from RBC, which is tremendous. So that will allow some flexibility in terms of content, as well as multiple trails to offer to our community, and that of course supports that remote or social distancing aspect that's really key right now. And then the big goal of making sure that we meet our goal in our strategic strategy. So 21,000 trees will be planted by the end of the year, and that's absolutely tremendous. And an integrated watershed management, a lot of activities getting projects up and going. We're hiring a number of staff in order to assist with some of the summer operations, both in integrated watershed management as well as conservation lands. And the other thing that IWM is doing is a lot of communication work, a lunch and learn series, which we're seeing some pretty good uptake for. So that is a quick summary of my CAO report, Mr. Chair.
We're going to put you on the clock every month. Let's get a motion to receive the monthly report, and we'll see if there's any questions. Director Windover, seconded by Director Smith. Thank you. Any questions? Deborah, do you have a question? Catherine, go ahead.
No, I didn't have a question. I thought you wanted a seconder.
I got a seconder, but I'll get you next time. Thank you. Deborah, any questions?
No, I thought you wanted someone to second.
Okay. So I'm not seeing any. Last call for questions to receive the update. Anyone opposed to receiving the report? We'll consider that passed. Thank you. Okay, so we're about 6 minutes to 2. So let's take a break because we're going to do our Source Water Protection Board meeting at 2. So let's take a break, and they can get the other board members on board, and we'll come back at 2 o'clock and deal with that. So we'll recess the Kawartha Conservation Board meeting, and after the Source Water Protection Board meeting, sorry, we will come back and finish our agenda. So take a break, and we'll see you back at 2 o'clock. Okay. So at 2:25, we'll call the Kawartha Conservation Board meeting of April 22nd back to order. We'll go back to where we were. Item 7.6 is correspondence. In your package, I'll turn it over to Mark. Is there anything you want to highlight for us, Mark? Go ahead. You got to take your mute off there, pal. Mute, no. Go ahead. All right.
Thank you so much. So on the correspondence, there's one item that was received. It was from Conservation Ontario, comments on the growing the size of the greenbelt, something that the province is considering. A lot of the comments received were supportive of the province's exploration of expanding the greenbelt to urban river valley systems and to the Periscope moraine, which is on the Grand River side of things, so on the other side of Toronto. And there were some localized areas kind of in the GTA that were also identified for consideration. So some general thoughts that conservation had put together in terms of making sure it was science-based and the feature was well identified. So those were some other pieces that were noted in the comments.
Okay. I'm doing my own thing. So we'll get a motion to receive the correspondence, and we'll see if there's any questions. Director Windover, moved by Director Windover, seconded by Director Moore. Will you second that? Yep.
Yes, I.
Thank you. Any questions on the correspondence for Mark? Anyone opposed to receiving the correspondence? We'll
question for Mark?
Sorry?
Question for Mark?
Yep.
Just at the very end, you talk about social and societal needs. Talking about healthy, livable, and safe communities, and how that the Greenbelt should consider community needs from a well-being perspective, housing and infrastructure being required, but with a mixture of built and natural areas. What is it that you're wanting to communicate there? I'm not following that part. It sounds really good and important. I'm just wondering, could you elaborate a bit?
Sure, and just for the record, these are Conservation Ontario's comments, so it'd be my interpretation of what that is. But essentially, it's related to things that we're seeing locally as well as across the province. Is people really value natural spaces. And so being able to access those are really key for a number of different reasons, for mental well-being, for physical exercise, and that's what that comment is getting to. The section about livable and safe communities, I believe, comes from the provincial policy statement, and just a consideration for the province to consider in while they're looking at expanding the Greenbelt. So outlining that is a key consideration.
Great, thank you.
Yep, any further questions? We have a motion to receive. Anyone opposed to receiving it? That motion's passed. Thank you. We'll move down to action items. Item 9.1 is a corporate strategic plan. I think Mark and Mr. John Chambers are going to give us a quick update on some timing. So I'll turn it over to you, Mark. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as everyone knows, our current strategic plan is up for renewal. It's in its last year of the strategic plan. It was a 5-year strategic plan. So we're looking at updating it this year so we can have a fresh strategic plan for the years to come. The framework that we've identified, the general framework, is identified in the staff report, looking at a couple of touch points with the board throughout the process in order to make sure that we have we're developing it with your input, and also before we go out to public consultation on the plan, making sure that we have a good idea of where you would like to position the organization moving forward. We are looking at having a staff and a facilitated, I would imagine, facilitated staff session with senior management and the board. And if that could happen before our May board meeting on the 27th, I believe it is, for a couple hours, that would be great. I should mention as well that this is not happening without John Chambers, who you can see is dressed very, very nicely today. And we are also happy to be doing this with some support from City Kawartha Lake staff, with Brenda Stonehouse, who recently completed the city's strategic plan and is involved with a couple other strategic items with the city. So with that, maybe what I'll do is I'll turn it over to John for some additional comments. Go ahead, John.
And through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is an exciting year for us. Obviously, our existing strategic plan will come to an end. And with everything gone on over the last year and certainly what's continuing to go on, this is really an exciting time to be looking forward, looking to the future, putting together a strategic plan that speaks to our organization, speaks to the needs of our member municipalities and our partners and the community at large. And the success of this strategic plan obviously really hinges upon the board of directors. This ultimately will be the board's approved strategic plan. So during the next 6 months, we will be undertaking some consultation, and that consultation will start with the board of directors. As Mark alluded, hopefully there'll be a session before our May board of directors meeting. That will be facilitated by the city's Brenda Stonehouse, the strategy and performance specialist. What we're hoping to do during that facilitated session is complete a SWOT analysis and a pest analysis, which will really provide a solid framework and understanding and really sort of get some key information out of the board of directors in terms of a direction moving forward. What we'll also be doing following this board meeting, I will be sending a copy of the strategic plan, our existing strategic plan, with a short survey to our existing board of directors to get your feedback on what's already contained within the strategic plan. Following that, we will be compiling that information, coming back for a second session in June, and that will provide the clear direction from the board that we need to move forward over the summer months to bring back a draft in early fall. So that's really sort of the time frame, and I'm certainly looking forward to the process and from all of your valued input. So.
Thanks, gentlemen. So I guess we need to know so a couple things is the board okay if we plan a session, say 10 o'clock in the morning before our next board meeting, and keep it separate from the board meeting at 1? We don't want to have too long a board meeting, but at 10, Brenda had mentioned she doesn't think it'll be 2 full hours, but you know, if we can maybe allow an hour and a half to 2 hours at 10 o'clock on the morning of the board meeting, it's kind of important that we get some direction from the board before we go out to the public, obviously, with that. So is there any objections to that? I know you got to check your calendars and stuff, and maybe John, we can send that request out when we send the strategic plan out, and just ask when everybody checks if the majority are good with that, as maybe just one of the questions. Ted, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. No, that day works for me, and I just have to say I'm looking forward to having a pest analysis done. I've never had that before. So I hope it isn't too intrusive. Thank you.
Well, we'll see what happens. The other thing to keep in mind is this current plan is a 5-year strategic plan. There's been a bit of discussion about, do we do another 5-year plan, or should we look at a 10-year strategic plan, which is a little higher level with maybe a touch point each term of council over the 10 years following. So just a couple things to keep in mind as we go forward with this, and any comments that you have, as John mentioned, there'll be a small survey along with it, but any other comments regarding direction or input or what you'd like to see, feel free to just ad lib back to John, and then we'll compile that and hopefully confirm a meeting on at 10 o'clock on the morning of the next board meeting, if that works for most. I don't know if it'll work for everybody, but we'll shoot for most. Any other questions on the timelines, update, strategic plan at this point? Sorry, Deborah, I don't see your hand because your screen's fairly slim, so go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just really like our strategic goals: protect, discover, optimize, conserve, connect. Anyways, that's all I'll say. I just really like them.
I think that'll be one of your survey questions, so you'll get an opportunity to comment on that. What do you like about them? What don't you like about them? So good stuff. So can I get a motion that the framework and timeline for the corporate strategic plan update be approved, please?
I'll make that.
Director Smith, seconded by Director Dunn. Any other questions, comments for John or Mark? Anyone opposed to that motion? We'll consider that passed. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. That's item 9.1. We'll go down to item 9.2, which is the Asset Acquisition Reserve Fund for equipment purchases. I got Mark and Emma. We're talking dollars, so we need to get Emma on board. Go ahead, Mark, do you or Emma, who's ever given us an update? Go ahead.
Yep, sure. So this item here, it's related back to a need to access our reserve funds, specific to our equipment pool. So there's a couple of pieces of equipment that are past their lifespan. One of them is not, and this is a flow meter that we use to in various projects in order to find out how much water is moving down the system, and that gets tied into nutrient loads, for instance, on various streams, and lets us know how weeds will be looking at what the outlook is for lake management plans, and so it's a pretty critical piece of equipment. That one is just over $10,000, and our limit to the board, of course, as per our tangible capital asset, is $5,000. Those need to be capitalized. So as our purchasing policy does require these funds to be approved by the board. You see the overall amount in the reserves in this particular reserve is $287,000, almost $288,000. So there is enough money for that. The other item is our plotter. Recently, we had some issues with it. It's not printing. The estimate for that is fairly significant to repair it. So we are looking at trying to get a new plotter in-house as well. And there are some security breaches potential with that particular piece of equipment from some research that we've done. But it's also outlasted its span by about 3 years. I know the service people were surprised that we actually had it in service still. So we are looking at $23,000 a maximum of, even though the total is $21,600 with our current estimates. But that allows for some additional pieces that we might not have anticipated to be covered off as well. Okay. And if there's more specific questions, then Emma can answer.
You know you want it, Mark. Now we'll check with Emma. Do we need this equipment, Emma?
We absolutely do. We wouldn't be asking for it otherwise. We've really looked at options as well to make sure we get the best and the cheapest options going. So I am very confident actually that we've done our work here. So yes. That is our request. Thank you.
Understood. I was joking, by the way. But so, question? Go ahead, Deborah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering why the hydromet costs $9,800, but the tax and delivery is $11,300. How does that work?
I'll pass it over to Emma for that. It could be because it's coming from the United States, so there's often a little bit of a tariff that's attached to it. But Emma will probably know the specifics on that.
Yes. So through the chairs, the 11,300 is the total amount. So that we've just allowed a couple of $1,000 between the actual equipment amount and what. Yeah. So it's not in addition to.
Okay, it seemed to read that the product was 98 and the delivery was 11.3, so I was a little thrown off by that.
No, apologies. No, that's the total.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Hooper, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to either Emma or Mark. What happens to the older pieces of equipment? Do they just go to the, older equipment graveyard, and is there any sort of a write-off on that sort of thing? I'm just looking at it from, can the piece of equipment still be used, or?
So what I'll do is I'll let Emma talk about the equipment itself and the usability, and then Wanda might be able to outline a little bit about our tangible capital assets. And there is some work that has to go on in order to get that off the books and the other one on.
That's right. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
So in response to the flow tracker question, so sorry, through the chair, we can continue to use that piece of equipment currently. However, the manufacturers stopped supporting that equipment in 2019.
Right.
So if we want any replacement items or any kind of digital support, we won't get it. So we are going to be really stuck if this equipment fails, which is why we're requesting purchase of a new item, because it is integral to our business. Everything we do in terms of our lakes and our creeks.
Like, just ask a question in regards to that. You touched on a good point, because I know I just bought a new computer. Do we have support that will come along with, so you're going to pay whatever you're paying for the piece of equipment, but then there's a $5,000 extra bonus that you have to pay for support in regards, which is kind of killer sometimes.
Yeah, so with this, the new equipment, we would get the support with that within that cost.
Perfect. Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything, Wanda, to the write-off of the old equipment, or?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Hooper. I think that we've probably written that one off already.
Okay, that's good. That's all I wanted.
There's no life left. As far as what do we repurpose that equipment for, I think there was some discussion with the manufacturer that might sell us the equipment, that they would absorb that back into their recycling program and maybe, remove parts that could be reused, or they were giving us some sort of trade-in. We were working with them, or I think the City of Kawartha Lakes has an excellent electronics recycling program.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? So the motion is that the recommended resolution that the purchase of technical equipment to a maximum of $23,000 be approved for funding from the Capital Asset Acquisition Reserve Fund. I need a mover and a seconder. Director Wood,
I'll move that.
Director Seymour Fagan will second that.
I will. Kathy Moore.
Thank you. Any questions? Further questions?
I'm good. Thank you.
Anyone opposed to the purchase? That motion's passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9.3 is the Conservation Ontario Governance, Accountability and Transparency Initiative. I'll turn it over to Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this resolution comes out from the Conservation Ontario meeting that was held earlier this month, and so this resolution is really following up from the recent amendments to the Conservation Authorities Act, and making sure that all 36 CA activities in terms of updating their bylaws and other activity to make sure we're in compliance is tracked and then reported back to the province and any other stakeholders as may be needed. There were 3 different specific actions that were identified, and essentially what I said covered that. But the 3 specific ones are updates to our administrative bylaws. There is some need to update those bylaws based on the changes that were proclaimed. Proactive reporting on the priorities, and promotion and demonstration of results. So there is some recognition that there will be some material that needs to be provided or developed in order to help provide some consistency across the 36 CAs, and then report the activity on this throughout the year. So that's really what this resolution is about.
Thank you. And I personally want to thank the past Chair, Director Smith, for warning me on the length of the Conservation Ontario meetings and the absolute massive agenda that they plow through. Thank you for the heads up. I appreciate that. I got to tell you, there's a lot. I did my first meeting a couple of weeks ago. A lot of people doing a lot of good work behind the scenes. You know, there's a lot of bodies and a lot of reports that we go through at those meetings, but you know, just a lot of things going on in the background, and people, you know, coming at it from different directions. So just wanted to say that, you know, it's an overwhelming agenda. You sort of look at it and you go through the reports, but you can just tell that there's a tremendous amount of work being done behind the scenes to pull it all together. So I think they've certainly got the best interest of the environment in mind. Some of them are a little over the top, but you know what, that's par for the course, and some of them aren't, and that sort of creates that whole balance as we go forward. So any questions for Mark on this report? Okay, so the motion, recommended resolution, whereas the provincial government has passed legislative amendments related to the governance of conservation authorities, and whereas conservation authorities remain committed to fulfilling accountable and transparent governance, therefore be it resolved that Kawartha Conservation endorse the 3 key actions developed by the Conservation Ontario Steering Committee to update CA administrative bylaws, to report proactively on priorities, and to promote, demonstrate results, and that staff be directed to work with Conservation Ontario to implement these actions and to identify additional improvements and best management practices. Anybody want to move that? Director Hooper, seconded by Director Seymour Fagan. Any questions, comments? Anyone opposed to that motion? That motion is passed. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mark. Item 10 is new business. I don't believe we have any. Any reports or updates from board members? None that I've been made aware of. If there ever are any, just give us a heads up before the meeting, would be appreciated. Closed session, we have none, and all we have left is a motion to adjourn, please. Director Windover, seconded by Director Kiesebrink. Thank you. Anyone opposed to adjourning? Seeing none, that motion is passed. Thank you again, folks, and please look forward to the strategic plan that's going to come out to you shortly. And thanks to all the staff for contributing to the reports. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Happy Earth
Stay
Day,
safe,
everyone.
everybody.
Happy Earth Day.